Welcome, I'm Dottie Abbott, and I'm glad that you could join us for the first Congregational Sunday service. We're so happy that you could be here.
Hi everyone, in a change of roles, I'm going to read the scripture today and Stephanie is going to talk with us. So this is Jeremiah 31 through 34. The days are surely coming, says the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. It will not be like the covenant that I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, a covenant that they broke, even though I was their husband, says the Lord. But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says God. I will put my law within them, and I will write it on their hearts. And I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer shall they teach one another, or say to one another, know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least to the greatest, says God, for I will forgive them their iniquity and remember their transgressions no longer. Good Yom Tov, Congregation Shir Shalom. I miss you. Thank you for including me and my family in your Passover celebration. It's an honor to be with you. Steve asked me to think of a couple of songs that spoke to the Exodus story, that spoke about freedom, and these are the two that came to mind. I don't feel no ways tired. I've come too far from where I started from. Oh, nobody told me the road would be easy. I don't believe you brought me this far to leave me. My God is a rock in a weary land, in a weary land, in a weary land. My God is a rock in a weary land, shelter in the time of a storm. My God is a rock in a weary land, in a weary land, in a weary land. My God is a rock in a weary land, shelter in the time of a storm. Oh, shelter in the time of a storm. Oh, shelter in the time of a storm. The heart of the Hebrew people is expressed in this scripture today, the Shema as we know it. You shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And that truth shall be written on the doorposts of your heart. God's law of love, not known, but known and lived. We've engaged these last few weeks in heart-opening conversations about wonder and grief and loss and pain and rage. Today, I want to talk about how to listen to what is written on the heart. How can we intentionally engage with each other in heart-opening conversations? How can we really listen so that the person we are with feels deeply heard and held? And Stephanie and I had a number of conversations about her experience learning to listen in this lifetime. And so she came to mind as a great teacher in this respect. And today we'd like to share a little bit about what it means to learn to listen to the heart. So Stephanie, thanks for being here. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your experience with peer counseling and what it was that drew you to it, what you learned from it, what you carry with it, and how it shaped your ability to listen.
Great question. I think I was always searching for the right way to love somebody and give somebody what they needed. And that stemmed from all kinds of familial issues and whatnot. And then I came across a form of counseling where two people took turns listening to each other. And this was when I was in college. And the first thing that really appealed to me about it was that I wasn't required to respond. That my role was simply to allow that person to tell their story, whatever it might be, and then to feel whatever feelings that story might evoke. And that was hard for me to do, because I always like to jump in and tell them, oh yes, I feel for you, thinking that was going to help them.
Right.
Or to just try to fix it and try to offer solutions for getting out of whatever dilemma or pain.
Or tell them a story that it related to for you.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
To help them feel not alone. Yeah. And what this particular method was aimed at was that, as my role as the listener, that I wasn't supposed to say anything except to encourage, if they started to emote or express any feeling, whether it was nervousness or boredom or sadness or grief, if they started to cry, if they started to get angry, that I would continue to...
Just to encourage, to allow those feelings to come.
And to
support.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to remind them that it was okay to have those feelings.
Yeah.
And not in a...
No, but like you're safe. It's, you know...
I wouldn't even say I'm
not
safe.
safe. Okay.
No, I wouldn't say... I would just say... what would I say? I would just say, I'm here. Go on.
Go on. Good. Yeah.
Tell me more about it. What was the experience like for you? When did you first feel that way? And if they looked like they were suddenly getting out of their feeling or out of their own storytelling, I would slowly try to guide them back to it, to make sure they were finished.
Yeah.
One of the theories of this particular method was that if we get to tell our story repeatedly and feel the feelings or the thoughts that arise from feeling those feelings, that we would eventually, the story would become eventually less charged.
Yeah.
And that person, whoever that was on the other end receiving the attention, could then come to their own conclusion from the vantage point of that not happening at the moment, because often they were talking about something traumatic, or that when they first started this feeling that they've since carried around with them, that they could retell the story in a place where it wasn't like, I've heard that before.
That's such holy listening, you know, to witness someone, to just witness someone and you know, walk with them, companion them.
It was, and the other thing was to not get, like I would sometimes, tears would form in my eyes, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But that my job was merely to allow them to just go on and just to be there. And I wasn't totally silenced, but I really had to think about when to jump in.
It just occurs to me that most of us are never taught to listen that way, you know, and unless you've been through training to be a therapist or a pastor, or, you know, that we just don't have a lot of models for companioning people in telling their own truth and making space for them to share their deepest heart knowledge in a way that doesn't make them vulnerable to our opinion or our judgment, right? And so how powerful it is that you were given this training early on in your life. And I wonder, as you know, moved into your career as a performer, et cetera, and gave birth to your first child, how that training came to be foundational for your relationship with Maris.
Yes. Well, that training was certainly a big part of it, in that instead of being sort of trying to tamp down on someone's expressions of emotions, i.e. crying, shaking, getting angry.
Handing them a tissue box.
Handing
Stop now, please.
Exactly. They're there. It's okay now. That was then and this is now.
That's right.
Instead of trying to shut that down, finding helpful ways, okay? And that did require some skill, because you don't want to, quote, re-traumatize them.
Right.
So you're not like, tell me again what happened.
Right.
But there were guidances of how to balance the telling of a painful story, or the feeling of a painful story, with it re-traumatizing them. And that would really often involve then, on the counselor's part, or the whatever you call it, the listener's part, reflecting back love and acceptance, which is hard to do when someone's crying, or, you know, and just, we would call it, what did they call it? It was empathetic listening rather than sympathetic listening.
Oh, nice.
That you would just go, you know, oh, I see you trying to work your way through that. Just observing, feeding back what you're getting from them, and then telling them, just saying something from the heart, like, I'm here and it's safe now. I would, you know, I guess you would say that. There wasn't a script for it, but you honed this ability to just love them and see how they were innocent. That was the main thing, how what was happening to them was happening to them, that they weren't the agent in making it happen. So saying, wow, you were how old? You were 5, you were 15, you were 25?
Wow.
Wow. How awful, or not, we would try to stay away from an adjective, but just noticing. I'm a little out of shape, as you can see, because it's something that just requires your really waiting until you found the right word.
Right,
but
and such intention, yeah.
And also just continuing to gaze at them.
Yeah.
Like not turn your gaze away.
That's right, right.
And to gaze at them with intentional, I'm with you. I am there with you now as you're reliving that moment, even though no one was there with you. I'm here with you now, without saying that. Just kind of being their imaginary friend, being the parent they needed, being the sibling they needed, being the father they needed, being the teacher they needed. Just, I'm here with you while you go through this experience. You are safe now.
So then you give birth to a child who, by conventional standards, has some different abilities and different ways of speaking and hearing and behaving in the world than are the norm. And you've cultivated this art of being an amazing listener.
Sometime.
Right? So how does that begin to shape your language with her, your heart language with her?
Great question. That's gently put. I mean, basically, I felt like I had a kid from another planet. Because everything, all of my assumptions of how people are. We're blown to bits, right? Little babies, they look at their mom, they imitate them, they're trying to talk all the time, they point to let you know what they need. My daughter did none of that. She literally would seem like she was in another world, hearing other voices and, normally you would expect when you talk to someone that they will eventually find your eyes.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to read not only your words, but your heart through your eyes.
Absolutely. And how old was she when she received a diagnosis, and what was the formal diagnosis?
The formal diagnosis was autism, and she didn't receive it until she was 16 months old.
Wow.
But I knew.
You knew.
From a few weeks after her birth, at least 3 weeks, 2 weeks, that she was different.
And you're a single mom at this point.
I was on my way to being a single
Yeah.
mom. And I was in a mother's group, and so we all had our babies, and I went to the pediatrician, and she was physically robust and adorable and a happy kid. So but she cried, it was obvious that she had sensory things, so that was noticeable. I couldn't hold her to calm her down, she would stiffen.
Oh, wow.
I had to put her in a dark, silent room where there was no sensory input.
So again, learning to listen. You're learning to listen to
what's
actually happening, not what you want to happen, but what's actually happening.
And the first rejection is, bringing her into my space is actually doing more harm than good. How can I love this child? And the first thing was, let her be. Let her be. Follow her cues.
Wow.
And it was as if I lived in two completely separate realities, but my reality lived inside her reality. I literally began to think I had to look and experience the world as she did, which was what? She's not pointing, she's not speaking. One day I was with her and I just started singing what I wanted to tell her. Like, now we're gonna go get dressed and go to the park. And I would just, I didn't think about it, I just did it because I didn't know what else to do, or it just occurred to me. And as soon as I started singing, she locked eyes with me.
Wow.
She locked eyes with me.
You found her heart language.
I found her, yes. And I could make her laugh because I'd make up lyrics. There was one, I was singing lullabies. I was singing, hush, my baby, don't you cry. Mama's gonna sing you a lullaby. And then I started making up lyrics. Now we're driving up the road and and I noticed she liked the rhythm as much as the words, that she could relate to the rhythm. Again, I think of drumming. I think of heartbeat. Right? And I think about how I live my life as an artist, as a musician, which is equal parts, if not greater parts, listening than doing. Because to make gorgeous music, and Miles Davis would say this, the silences are as important as the notes.
And Maris is a wonderful musician, beautiful flautist.
Yes.
Yeah.
She has perfect pitch, none of which we knew until later. But we knew that in her womb, she was listening to, I was very busy concertizing and rehearsing with folk musicians, jazz musicians, rock musicians, and the first time I understood the power of sound and heart was that when she was just an infant, just a couple months old, I was playing a recording of a concert that I had done while she was pregnant. And
while you were pregnant
with
her.
While I was pregnant. Thank you. See, I get
that's
confused who belongs to who.
Okay.
And she was having trouble kind of keeping her head straight at that point. That was she eventually did. She lifted her head.
Oh, interesting.
And it was clear she recognized it.
Wow.
And I thought, whoa.
She hears on a different level.
She hears on a different level, and that's the first thing that made sense to her in the womb, was sound. And so when she came out of the womb, she was still kind of in some place that wasn't exactly here.
Yeah.
But it was here, it was just here in a different dimension. And the dimensions that it was here was sound, tone of voice, light, color, smell, similar to animals. And at that time I got in touch, well, I could go on about...
Well, I want to just plug in there for a second. I'm really struck by your saying that in order to listen to her, you had to get inside and see life as she saw it. And I think this is a really profound difference than how most of us go about our lives, right? And when we're talking about this big work that's ahead of us, the restoring of the breaches between a divided country, divided religions, all that you introduce such an interesting idea of getting inside someone else's life experience and trying to listen from that place. I think this is a powerful invitation to consider. And I wonder, way fast forwarding, we'll have to have another conversation about Maris because it's a wonderful love story between you and she, and also David and she. But this pandemic has been particularly hard on her and hard on you. And so if you could just say a little bit about how you had to, again, reframe your listening, because so much of your listening is touch. And you couldn't touch her. So what was that like?
In the beginning, it was really hard, and through the fire season, it was really hard because of all of our anxiety.
Right.
And Maris has anxiety. That's one of her things, along with her autism, and not anxiety, by the way, about being autistic or being different.
Awesome.
Because one of the things, and I know I'm going back and forth,
right.
One of the things that I felt and I somehow knew was the most important thing was loving her as she is.
Yeah.
In whatever abilities or disabilities or challenges, and constantly I just couldn't help myself but telling her how gorgeous she was and how amazing she was.
Oh my gosh, so loving her as she is and affirming how gorgeous and yummy. Those are excellent strategies, I think, to remember from this conversation, right? So we'll dog-ear those. Go on.
And of course, right, I'm her mother, and those things didn't come hard for me, but I did, because I spent so much time trying to understand her, that I started to see what magic she is, how much she knew, and how much she was so different, and yet she was exactly the same as me.
Wow.
And what I mean by that is that she needed to be loved and accepted. Hands down.
Yep.
That was like, you can't do anything else.
Nope.
And if she feels the disapproval or the judgment, she's going to feel it.
Don't you think everybody's that way?
I do.
We just cover it up better.
We cover it up. In fact, one of her teachers in second grade, a wonderful teacher here in town, because we had all these things that would help her in class, because she was in a regular class at that time. The teacher said, I'm going to use this on everyone in class. These are fabulous skills, which was start teaching her to start with a compliment, meaning find something you genuinely see about that person, and then see, and then make a comment, and then listen. And so she was using this with all the second graders, and they all loved it because they got loved up.
Yeah.
But that wasn't your question. What was your question?
I wondered in the pandemic, how you had to learn to find a new language with her, because we're all in the process of having to learn a new language together.
Yes.
Right now. As we're coming out of this pandemic, I think we have to figure out how to find a new language with each other. The old one is like behind us.
It is.
And so how can we learn to listen to what is now, to what's needed now? Some really good clues are to start by affirming people, right? And being present and listening.
And another one, I think there were gifts in the pandemic, I think, for many of us, as well as tremendous pain. And one of the gifts with Maris was I was actually forced, as she's an adult now, I was forced to find new ways because all my old ways were gone. And one was using the computer more directly. And it allowed her time to think about her response. This is the other thing that I learned with Maris that I think is applicable to social justice work and just human work, is giving her time to respond. Saying something, asking a question, and then literally counting to 10, or just being in that silence together, which is often awkward because we're so used to feeling that silence. And I almost call it a paradoxical silence because you so want to encourage them to answer you and for your reassurance, but also because you want them to have an answer for them. And then being in that place of, I don't know what she's going to say. I don't know if I said the right thing. I don't know how she feels. And just resting in that waiting. And sometimes I would have to go, okay, she really doesn't understand my question. So I would think, what is she trying to say? Is there something she needs to ask me in order to answer that question? So sometimes I would say, is that question a little confusing to you?
Great.
Or would you like me to be more specific?
We never give people that opportunity, do we? Out in sort of normal society.
No, and we don't. And then she would say, and if she didn't give an answer to that, I would say, let me throw something out, and you tell me if you agree with that, if that's closer to what you mean. And if it is, tell me. And if it's not, I'll try something else.
So I really hear a slowing down and a willingness to rest in the silence and not get freaked out by it, not rush in to save it, but to really allow that space. And that feels so much a part of this thawing out process that we're going to need to go through together. We've been maybe with one or two people, if we're lucky, for the last year, and it's almost like we're going to have to relearn to be in relationship again.
Well, and as you say, relearn to be in a relationship. If you don't mind, I'm going to bring in my other kid, my son, who I'm seeing for the first time in almost 10 months, 9 months. And I was thinking about your sermon a couple of weeks ago about grief being a process. Right, and it not just being grief, it's just something that we weave into our process. And I was thinking about my son, who just graduated college and started a job all during the pandemic. No graduation, no nothing. And he started a job in Boston, Cambridge, great city. He's so excited. He's been in his apartment since September through the winter, which he's not used to. He's a Californian. And I've never seen my son depressed. And I see he's depressed. Even though he lights up when he talks about his work. And I realized that, I've thought about, it's really hard on the young people. But seeing it, what did we do the first night? David and I started to talk about the things we learned and our experience. And I could see that it was like,
not registering.
But he's being the good listener that he's learned to be, having a sister like Maris. And he said, I think that's true for a lot of people your age.
Right.
I think that's really true. It's really different though for us. And I realized I need to listen to him. He hasn't talked to an adult. He's only talked to his peers, and they're all going through it, just like I'm talking to my peers. And so we already feel like we get it, like you and I get it, but my son needs me to listen to him. And not like, how's it been, Gabe? How's it been? He needs specific questions. He needs me to get into his
reality.
And ask him questions as if he was a child.
Stephanie, I'm so grateful for this time together. I think, I hope we'll do it again. Some terrific invitations to listen differently than we have been enculturated to listen, which is usually by forming an answer while someone else is talking, or
Or forming a reassurance.
or forming
Because
a reassurance or a
I'm
judgment. No, you're
I'm,
all
so,
right,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
because it's just one last thing. Because I was telling another peer about this thing I discovered with my son. And she said, oh, they're young people, they're resilient, they'll pull through. And I thought, of course they will. Of course they will.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that their lives are, that they're going to pull through. I really don't. I should say there are those that I
Yeah.
worry more about.
Yeah.
I can only talk about what I know.
Right.
Of course he'll pull through because he loves his work and he knows he's listened to, but that's not what he needs to hear now.
No, and that doesn't change the need to express deeply
And to grieve.
the feeling, to grieve, to rage. Right? This is a little bit what we were talking about last week. To create a space for the breadth of feeling. Yeah, and to let it move through. I think that's our work right now. As parents, as colleagues.
As teachers.
As congregants, right, as teachers for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As friends, as neighbors.
Yeah, totally. Great. Thank you. So this has been an important conversation on holy listening, what it means to companion someone, to hear the shape of their heart, to hear what's written on the doorposts of their heart. And one of the great poets that America has had is Mary Oliver, who's not with us anymore, and we still are grieving that loss. But in the very familiar poem that she wrote, Wild Geese, she said, you don't have to be good. You know, you don't have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about your despair, and I'll tell you about mine. I think before we can get to the place of resurrection, which we all hope to get to post-pandemic, there's a whole lot of holy listening that needs to happen along the way. So thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you to Kathy and to this amazing congregation.